really transparent video because I feel like a lot of people can relate to this topic. And just a heads up and a forewarning, this is going to be a really long one, more than likely, like really long. And this video, this story is not to bash any of the parties involved. I'm gonna be really honest with the parts that I played as well. And yeah, like this video is not to bash, it's not to be malicious. I'm just being honest about my experience with this type of person. And that's it. And I hope that y'all can find this helpful if you're going through the same thing, and that I'm not gonna say that you catch the red flags before I did, because I caught the red flags. I was just very much so in denial because I had so much love for this person. So I'm not gonna say that you catch the red flags, but more so that you catch them and make the right decisions following being made aware of those red flags. So before we get into this, please give this video a thumbs up so that more people can find my content if you do find it relatable. Subscribe to my channel and then turn on your post notifications because I'm very sporadic with how I post. If you don't have them on, you will miss me. And all my social medias will be linked down below. Let me turn this off. And actually, before I even do this, y'all, and this is not sponsored at all, but I get a lot of questions about my privacy screen. And I mean, like, people have stopped me on the train to ask me where I got it. I get stopped all the time when people ask me about this privacy screen. Let me actually put something on the screen so y'all can see. Ooh, let me get my messages off though. Right, screaming. So boom, this is my phone when it's straight on, right? When it's straight on, you can see everything, right? If I even tilt this mug a little bit, boom, nothing. You literally can't see anything. I love this. And then it's not your typical black one. It's like got this like orangey pinkish red tint to it that I really like. That's my privacy screen. Like, you literally can't see anything. And that's honestly, that's part of the reason I got it, because I've had people sit and really like try to be in my phone and like see what I'm doing or whatever. And it's not like I be doing anything crazy, but like, as a stranger, why are you in my phone? You know what I mean? And so when I was living in New York, I was like, I just want a privacy screen, because I just feel like people on the train, to be nosy, they be in your business. And honestly, with the amount of people that have stopped being asked, that's how I know that I wasn't tripping. Like, people be in your business. So anyway, that will be linked in my Amazon storefront. My lashes too, because I get a lot of questions about my lashes. My lashes will also be linked in my Amazon storefront, because these are the lashes that I use. They're my favorite. They look like minks. And what I do, like, I cut them and then I put them on like in pieces. But these are the best strips. Like, honestly, they're like this D-curl, like really pretty D-curl, and they got like that wispy look to it. So yeah, I will have both those will be linked to the storefront, but we're gonna get into this video, you guys. Okay. I just want to start this off by saying I'm so appreciative of how respectful and nice and kind people were in the last video that I did. So honestly, y'all, I'm just truly asking that with this situation, you keep the comments respectful, and you can still give your opinions about the situation or situations that you guys are going through, whatever the case may be. But again, this is not like, the video is not to be malicious or like drag people or whatever. So just please be respectful. Okay, so where do I even want to start? I had a friend, and I mean like joined at the hip, soulmate, twin flame. We are the same person, the same soul split in two friend, right? Myself and this friend did like everything together. When I mean like soulmate, like twin flame, I feel like it was to the point where we liked basically all the same stuff. Like, the only thing that we had different taste in was men, which is like, thank God, I have different taste in men from all my friends, so that works out great. We were like so similar to the point where like similar looks, very similar styles. We would show up places and not even communicate what we were wearing, but somehow show up and be wearing the same or very similar things, because like we have very, very, very identical taste in style, like hairstyles, everything. Like, it wasn't one of those things where it's like, oh, like, you know, this person is copying this person. It was no, like, we genuinely like all the same things, right? Literally, it was like having like twin telepathy kind of thing, basically, right? And I feel like in the beginning of the friendship, and honestly for the majority of the friendship, we were the best of friends. Like, you could not tell me shit about this girl. Anyone who knew me knew, like, if you feel a type of way about so-and-so, you better keep it to yourself around me, because I'm going 10 toes. I'm going crazy behind my mother friend, I don't care. We were just very, very aligned, you know what I mean? We made a lot of great memories. We had a lot of fun experiences. And I do feel like until certain things started to come up, I do feel like that person was genuinely a great friend to me, like one of the best friends I've ever had. And so everything that I'm about to say is like things that's like, I guess to me, it still doesn't make sense to me, but I no longer feel a way about it, only because of the fact that like, by the time we got to like the event that was like the straw that broke the camel's back, which will be later in the story, by the time we got to that point, I had already detached, and I was like, when I say that straw really broke the camel's back, like I was so over it that I just like no longer felt a way about us no longer being friends. Like the first time that we ever like had something, and again, these are all things I'll get to, but the first time we ever had something come up, I was devastated, like you sliding down walls, crying all week, heartbroken, didn't understand why we weren't communicating or why we were like, you know, I guess about to, you know, not be friends anymore. The first time that happened, I was devastated. The second time was my decision, and it was because I had just had enough, but we'll get into that. So basically, I guess where everything started was from the beginning of our friendship until like because like we were friends for years, right? From the beginning of our friendship until like, I would say maybe like the last year and a half, 2 years, this friend had been in relationships. Like it was, you know, she was always, I'm gonna try to tell everything without telling any business that's not mine to tell, because at the end of the day, like I'm still trying to be respectful about the situation. So my friend had always been in relationships throughout the bulk of the entirety of our friendship, right? So I had not really ever experienced being friends with her while she was legit single, and I mean like all the way single. Like, you know, there are some people, and I'm not saying this to be shady, some people can only really function in relationships. They don't really do well by themselves, and they don't really like know themselves outside of a relationship. I think everybody kind of knows like the type of person where it's like they hop from relationship to relationship. They don't have gaps in between relationships. They are always with somebody. So that was this friend, right? But I didn't care. Like, that's none of my business. You know, like if that's what makes you happy, if that's what, you know, makes the boat float, I don't care. Like I love you and I'm happy to be here. So I don't feel like things started to really spiral until she hit like a wall where for the first time, I think, or at least according to her, for the first time, she had not been in a relationship or in a serious talking phase. Like she just was like actually, you know, doing a lot of like sitting with herself and like, you know, trying to figure out herself. And I respected that so much, you know? But I feel as though when that happened, things started to, I think to a degree, that friends start to spiral at one point because of the fact that a lot of, and this is just my observation from like being friends with them, a lot of her worth was tied to male validation. And I'm not even gonna say a lot. I feel like kind of like all her worth was revolved around like male validation and getting attention from the opposite sex. And it's not like she ever hid it, but again, like she was always in a relationship, so I didn't really get to experience the full effect of what it is like to be kind of like present around somebody who is kind of like that. And she would always make jokes about kind of like how she was willing to like, you know, drop her friends over a dude, or like, you know, she would tweet stuff that was kind of like, you know, oh, like if I'm out with my friends and, you know, a guy whatever called me or said come home or said leave or whatever, I'm leaving. Or like basically like feeling validated by like men treating, or I can't even say men because this is like this is like boy behavior. But basically like these ninjas treating like their exes like shit, or like their baby mamas like shit in order to impress her. And I was, you know, it's just all things where it was like, I don't agree with it. Those are not things that like would make me feel good or validated. And I really like, I don't agree, but like, this is, you know, this is my friend. I love this person to death. Like, I also was not judging. It just got so like the whole energy of like that person's social media gave like kind of like internet mean girl. And I didn't like that. But at the same time, again, like this is somebody where like I had so much love for this person. So I was like, you know what, like, let me not sit on my high horse. Like, And again, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, like I don't necessarily agree, but like I can accept that we are different in certain aspects and it's okay to be different. Was my mentality. It was just like, you know what, golden retriever, black cat, like maybe I'm just trying to like, you know how some people, it's like you expect everyone to act like you or whatever, and at the end of the day, that's just not the case. Not everybody's gonna handle a situation like you, not everybody's gonna act like you, and I have to really sit with that and just be like, okay, like you can't think that just because somebody is handling a situation different that, oh, they're this horrible bad person. But at the same time, it's like if I was being honest, it's like, oh, okay, like I love you, you're not the best person, but I love you to death. And that's kind of what it was. So where things started, I feel like really getting more so where I was like, okay, like this is starting to like, I'm starting to kind of like have questions about where we stand as friends. And this friend had never done this before. Like these were comments that she had always made in like more isolated situations, but never as like direct responses to me telling her like, you know, basically like me like pouring my heart out about how I feel about like relationships or dating, or like the fact that, you know, at the time I had been like cheated on really, really bad. So like when I got cheated on or whatever, this is the friend that like really like stepped forward and got me through it. Like literally like was going out of their way to make sure I wasn't sitting in the house. Like, you know, just was like, again, in a lot of aspects, a phenomenal, beautiful spirit and a great friend. We hit this point where it felt like it came out of, at least to me, it felt like it came out of nowhere, where I would be venting to her about like, you know, because I had been single for a considerable amount of time, and I would be venting to her about basically like relationships and just feeling like, oh my gosh, like, you know, like I just feel like very neglected and very rejected by the whole concept of love. Like I just feel like it's not gonna happen for me. Like I just feel so down. Like I would literally be like crying on the phone to this friend, right? And the response is like at one point in time, literally what like you would think the response would be like just encouraging things or whatever, right? Then the responses became, it would be, well, I really can't relate to that because like I have a girlfriend, kitty cat. Like every guy that I ever sleep with like always wants to date me after. So like, I don't know, like they always fall in love with me, they're obsessed. And I'd be looking like, why is that? Like I just poured my heart out to you about how I feel kind of like rejected, or like I feel sad about relationships, and your response is to like rub it in my face, or like, oh, ninjas choose you type thing. So like you can't relate because like you've never been through no shit, because ninjas are always like, you know, it's just like, and it started happening a lot to the point where like even other people started to catch it, and other people were like, okay, like I don't really know if like, they would try to find nice ways to say like, oh, I don't really know if that's your friend, but like they knew that I was so defensive about this person, and I would go so hard and so crazy about this person, that no one actually really wanted to like, in the beginning, no one really wanted to be like, okay, Sherry, like, girl, because I would jump down anybody's throat. People told me in hindsight, they were like, you know, we didn't want to say anything because like we knew that like over that person, you weren't going to be trying to hear anything and you were going to get to arguing with us. And I was like, that's correct, like you're right. I could see why people were hesitant to tell me, right? So then it got to the point where situations would happen, and granted, and this is where I feel like I was wrong, because I should have been, when I first ever felt this way, I should have said something from the very beginning, versus like kind of like waiting and things started building up because I wasn't speaking up, and I'm very outspoken, so for me not to speak up is like I was dead ass wrong for handling this aspect this way, you know? I felt like when it came to this friend, it always felt like if another girl tried me, oh, this friend was gunning for it, fussing them out, throwing hands, whatever it took, you know, like really had my back. If a man tried me in any type of way, hush mouth, acting like really like they didn't want to say anything or anything like that, right? And again, it kind of boiled back down to, at least from my perspective, it boiled back down to like male validation was way more important than being a good friend to me in these aspects. In all these other ways, this person was a phenomenal, great friend to me, until it came to male validation, and then it was like all that shit went out the window. guys could like, they could say weird shit to me and it wasn't like she never was checking them. It'd be like, oh, well, you know, like just seeming like scary, like didn't want to check them type shit. Whereas if it were me and my friends were being made uncomfortable in any type of way by a ninja at that, oh babes, I don't care, we gotta leave the function.
I feel like I need to be a little bit more specific because this part sounded a little confusing. I'm not talking about physical altercations or men being aggressive. I'm talking about those type of situations where, like, you know, back in high school, like a guy might be like trying to play your friend to impress other guys, or like trying to, like, you know, basically make a little kiki or make a joke out of like somebody you know in order to be with the in crowd of other people. Like they're almost like they're trying to like bully the person you came with because they feel like that'll make them look cooler to you or cooler to those that are around them type of thing. Those are the situations where it's like, okay, like if we're really friends, like why are you not stepping in for that? You know what I mean? Especially when it's like this specific person, I've seen how they handle situations, and I've seen a lot of the times where they cuss people out for way less or went crazy on people for way less, but all of a sudden it comes to this and, you know, you kind of hush mouth. So then I would be confused.
And I feel like almost it was like, instead of, again, me and this friend had very similar aesthetics. So it's like, instead of that friend checking them when they would say like little weird stuff, and I'll get into like more like what was being said and things that were being done. Instead of checking them, I really started to feel like this person is like, kind of like sitting back and enjoying it. Like it kind of felt like it was like validation for them that like, and mind you, the thought never crossed my mind about like, oh, like which friend is prettier, like any type of nothing, because at the end of the day, we're friends. I don't think of any of my friends as competition because I'm not competing with my friends. So the thought never crosses my mind, oh, I'm prettier than this friend or that friend or anything like that. All my friends are bad as fuck. All my friends are gorgeous. All my friends are 10s. No one can tell me otherwise. There is no competition because it's all love. Like there's no competition, right? I started to feel like this was a case where like there kind of was like secret competition. And I had never felt that from this friend before. I had never felt that from this friend before until things started happening. Because there would be situations like, okay, for example, and this was at a time where like I had become like, I was like really vulnerable. Like I wasn't the insecure friend until things started to happen like back to back to back, and then started to make me like question myself. I was vulnerable, I was insecure. I became like a shell of myself, and I was shy. And that had never been me. Like I was always like, I've always been very extroverted, outgoing, like life of the party. And I was like becoming a shell of myself because things would happen where, because we had similar aesthetics, men would do this thing called like negging, right? Where they like try to like basically like, I forgot the actual definition. Essentially they try to make you feel bad in order to have a chance with you type of thing. Or like they try to make you feel bad to impress another woman, or they try to make you feel bad to impress like another group of men, and they kind of like, they nitpick at you, right? So guys started to do that, and because we had similar aesthetics, but like that friend was like small, lighter skin, and you know, I'm a little thicker and I'm more of a brown skin type. I can't tell what it's like, but if y'all been here long enough, like you know, like my actual skin complexion, right? So colorism was still like playing into a lot of these factors too, right? So they would always compare myself and her, unwarranted. We would just be vibing, all of a sudden they would say some weird shit, and it'd be some weird shit downplaying me to uplift her, and it would never get checked. So I just kind of would be sitting there like, damn, like that's weird, you know? Like it was weird that they said it, but them saying what they would be saying wasn't the more hurtful part. It was the fact that my friend was never defending me, right? And then not only that, would sometimes even step in and make it worse. Like we basically we went on a trip, right? We're out of town, we're dancing, right? And there's this guy, and I started out dancing for him. Older guy, not anybody that neither one of us would ever want, right? I originally started, and then I brought her over there. So then we start taking turns. So he goes from like, oh my God, like you're so beautiful, to when it would be my turn to go back to dancing on him, he would say stuff in my ear like, yeah, you're mad pretty, but you don't got the juice like your friend. Like, you're pretty as hell, but your friend got more juice than you. And I'd be looking like, why you keep saying this weird ass shit in my ear, right? And I even told him, I said, stop saying that weird ass shit to me. Like, that's weird as fuck. Like, you're trying to get us to compete over you and it's not gonna happen. At least not on my end, it's not gonna happen because I don't want you. Neither one of us wants you. So like, why are you trying to get us to compete type of thing, right? And mind you, this trip was already going horrendously wrong. This trip was going so bad. Like, so many things had happened to me right before the trip and then during the trip that like, I was just like, my emotions were all over the place. I was going through it, right? And you could tell.
Honorable mention, because the reason the trip was going so bad was because she had basically suggested that we book the hotel through this guy that she knew, and he could get like, you know, he could do it half off or whatever, right? So I'm like, okay, cool, that sounds good. We book it through him. What he sent was not a confirmation for the room. So then we get there, we get to the hotel and they ask for my card and they're like, yeah, this is how much it's gonna be. And they take like $1,000 off my card. And I'm like, whoa, wait, I thought the room was already paid for because we had paid him like $5 something. They're like, no, the room was reserved. No, that's what he's saying. He sent the reservation for the room, but nothing had been paid for. So I'm like, I thought the room had been paid for. They're like, no, it hasn't been paid for. Like, So we took off the deposit plus the nights that y'all be here, or whatever. And it was, you know, so I'm like, what the hell? So I was like, no, take that off because that's not what, you know, that wasn't what me and the guy or what us and the guy had agreed to, right? And mind you, this friend recommended him. So basically the dude he stole our money, but I don't really, like, looking back on it, keep it a buck, I don't really feel like it was our money. Sometimes I almost feel like was you in on it type shit? Because then when I told that friend, I was like, girl, let him know that, like, you know, whatever, like, let him know this or let him know that, because, like, he basically just scammed us or whatever. She kind of was being, like, real hesitant, like, she didn't really want to say nothing. So I'm like, okay, like, maybe she don't want to say anything because we're still down here and, like, you know, we need him to, like, give us our money back because it's the first night that we got down to this place or whatever. I'm thinking, okay, maybe she just wants to wait until we finish the trip and we go back. But it really was given, she never addressed it. She never said nothing to him. And then they was cool after that. So I'm like, that's just super sus. Like, and when I say cool, it's not like there was a lot, but I guess it was like a dude, like he had tried to talk to her in the past or something like that, something. So it really gave like, okay, he probably reimbursed you for your half and just took my bread. And that's really weird because at the end of the day, or no, I think we had only paid him like maybe like a deposit or something. So maybe we paid him like $250. No, either we paid him $250. No, I think it was like $250 because the amount he ran off with, I remember thinking like, you did all that for like $250. Like why you do all that for that small ass amount, you know? But it kind of just still gave me like, but they took $1,000 off my card at the hotel. I got it back, but I didn't have it for the whole trip. And it just kind of gave me like, all right, like he probably paid you back because he cares to stay in your good graces, but he don't know me or nothing. He don't mind stealing my bread and then also getting the rest of my money locked up for the duration of this trip. He don't mind that I'm asked out. And then as a friend, why are you so okay with the fact he just did that?
So when I told her about what he had been saying, we were sitting in this restaurant and I told her, and instead of being like, oh, that's weird that he would say that, or like, you know, like don't listen to him, like that's weird. She said, and mind you, this is after like we had just been having a candid conversation about a bunch of stuff or whatever, and it you could tell I was getting emotional, but I just wasn't like over the edge, right? And so I told her about, you know, the stuff he was saying and like kind of like how it was making me feel, like it was making me feel weird, or like I don't like being compared to her because it's like we're two different people and it's unnecessary. And her response to me telling her that was, yeah, he like told me that, like he was like, yeah, I like your friend, aka me, but I really like you. Like I really like you. And in that moment, I was sitting there and I'm just like, what did you, like some shit you can keep to yourself. You know what I mean? Like I'm already telling you that the guy was basically saying things to me that like was making me feel bad about myself, right? In that moment, I feel like a genuine friend would have kept that to themselves and just been like, okay, like I can tell like she's already, her feelings are hurt. I'm not gonna stomp on her even more. She's already down. I'm not gonna like, why is you trying to kick me while I'm already down as my friend? You know what I mean? So when she said that, I literally, y'all, I busted out crying in the restaurant. It got to the point where every time we would go out, men would do that every single time. They would always compare us to, and it honestly wouldn't even be things that were necessarily even true. These men were just looking for an opportunity to pick at me and like, I guess like knock me off of like this imaginary high horse that they thought I was on, when in reality it's like, I literally just be chill. Y'all, I would come into situations chilling and vibing. I would be literally just like good energy, wouldn't even have the opportunity to speak or open my mouth yet. Somebody would be saying, like a man would be saying something weird as fuck to me. Like, I'd be looking like, what the, comparing us off rip, like literally didn't even get to breathe and function for 2 seconds yet, right? And it just started happening. It's like out of nowhere. Like, we had been friends for years, but out of nowhere, this just started happening like a lot this one specific year, right? And I also feel like even when it would be situations where, again, like I said, me and her, we had very similar aesthetics. We kind of looked similar, like both very, very pretty girls. And there would be situations where, you know, like sometimes like somebody who I had dealt with would like try to slide on her, or like vice versa, right? It would never be people that like we was like really locked in with. It would be more so like, okay, like maybe like a fling or whatever, like somebody like that would do it. Like never like our exes or anything was like on that wild shit, right? But even with it being a fling, it was just like, okay, if it would be somebody and they were like trying to like slide on me, and I knew that they had dealt with my friend, shutting it down. I love my friend, I'm loyal. But when it would be the other way around, and I'll speak on like one specific situation, right, where I was just like, I feel like it was handled kind of weird. There was a guy who had been in my DMs for years. Basically, long story short, I ended up linking up with him or whatever, and then he tried to slide on said friend. And when it happened, I told her, like she had told me about it, and I told her, I said, girl, cuss him the fuck out, because he got me fucked up, right? If that would have been the reverse, and she would have said, girl, cuss out this person I had to deal with or whatever because they got me fucked up for thinking that they was gonna slide on my best friend, I would have been dogging that ninja in the DMs, dogging disrespectfully, because I don't give a fuck what that man thinks of me at all. I don't care to like be on his good side or like try to not, you know, keep the peace behind. That nigga don't mean nothing to me. That's somebody you dealt with and he got you fucked up. So I'm gonna get disrespectful in this hoe, right? And this is a friend that I had seen get disrespectful in many other instances. This was not a friend that was like scary in most situations, right? But then we get to situations and say, hey girl, like, you know, let him have it because he got me fucked up. She kind of was acting like she didn't really want to do it. Because she had started the message off with like, I know you're not going to care about this, but so-and-so slid in my DMs, right? And in my head, I'm like, why would you think I wouldn't care about that? Because like, I get that we were just a fling or whatever, but it's still just like, he got me fucked up. So she acted really hesitant, right? So she said that she did it, but also like with this friend, and again, I don't want this to come off, I really don't want this video to come off like I'm bashing this person. I'm not saying this is a bad person. I'm just saying that there were tendencies where it's like, I just personally started to notice that this might have not been like the best friend for me. There was instances where like this friend would lie a lot, always lying, right? But I'm one of those people, I'm like, if it's not affecting me, I'm gonna let you lie in peace. And that's probably shit. That might be my karma for having that mentality at the time, maybe, I don't know. But I say all that to say, in this case, I feel like she said, quote unquote, that, oh, like I said something to him, whatever, woo-doo-woo. And I was like, okay, well, let me know when he responds, because I want to know what he's gonna say. Because she sent me a screenshot of his initial sliding her DMs, right? But she wouldn't send a screenshot of like what she replied to him. And I brought it up like 3 different times. And when I brought it up and I realized, I was like, okay, like she not trying to send this. I'm like, that's weird. And I know that you're not trying to send it because you didn't check him. And I had already caught it at the time. I was like, that's weird that she acted real hesitant to like say anything to him. She don't want to send no screenshots, but she sent a screenshot of him sliding in the DMs, but you won't send screenshots of like what you said back. But you claim that you said something or whatever. You claim that, oh, he didn't read it or he didn't open it or whatever. Like basically just lying, because it's like, I'm not stupid. But I let it go because I was like, you know what? I love her. So I let it go. And things kept happening where it's like, oh, like, you know, like it just started to feel like any opportunity to like kind of like stomp on my feelings, it was like the opportunity was being taken. Like, and it got to the point where I stopped bringing up, and this was for a large chunk of like literally like for a couple of months. And I don't think this friend, I don't know if that person ever noticed, but I stopped bringing up relationships to her because the responses were always a direct like instead of being like I will never forget. This is actually when I stopped bringing up relationships for like a good long time, right? I stopped bringing up relationships because the response would always be, oh, well, I don't have that experience. Everyone falls in love with me.
Because I have girlfriend. Well, I can't say that word on here, but basically she would always say, because I have girlfriend, inserts the P word. And I would be looking in these moments like you're like telling somebody about this experience that might be traumatic or whatever, or it's like, you know, it's got you so down, and their response is to tell you like how good their kitty cat is. And like, what are you trying to say mine is trash? Like, I can't keep a man because I don't have girlfriend kitty. Like, it was just the wrong time to say stuff like that. Like, it's like, friend, I'm sad, and you're like basically telling me, well, I, you know, can't relate. My kitty cat's too good for that.
Which there's nothing wrong with feeling that way. There's nothing wrong with feeling that way. Any other time, period, bitch. And I see why. I see why they fall in love with you. You're a bad bitch, period. You're that girl. I see why. There's nothing wrong with that. I'ma hype you, bitch, period. But if I'm telling you about something that didn't work out in a relationship for me, and I'm being vulnerable and I'm being open with you, and you can tell that I'm hurting, why the fuck would that be your response in that moment? So this is a time when I really was like, okay, I'm not gonna keep on bringing up relationships, because at this point I started to feel like, okay, like I feel like you're doing this on purpose because you don't want me to talk about relationships anymore. Maybe you feel like, you know, maybe she was feeling like, oh, I was a Debbie Downer, or I was always in my feelings about it, or whatever. I'm sure it probably, you know, got annoying or whatever the case may be. But it started being so blatant that I feel like, okay, like you must be doing this on purpose to like get me to stop.
I also want to mention, I know this story makes it sound like it, but this wasn't one of those cases where it's like you have a friend and like they're always complaining or they're always down, or like every time they call you it's like on the bullshit or whatever. This wasn't that. We were both having a really hard year, and we would both vent to each other, and we would still have a lot of good moments within that year. We would have a lot of good conversations as well. I'm just telling y'all about the times where like I would be more open and more vulnerable, and the responses to those times. So I don't want y'all to be like, dang, like this sounds like it was draining. Like, you know, you were always, no, like I promise y'all, it wasn't given that. And not only that, we would both be venting about relationships, because even though like, again, like even though her responses would be one way, we were both single. We were both going through our dating woes and being like, yo, what is wrong with these men? Like, what's wrong with the dating pool? You know, it kind of has like poop in it. But we would just as often as sometimes it would be like a crying, I'm in my feelings about it. It would also be like a we're cackling, laughing, like just making a joke of a bad situation. You know what I mean?
Because at one point, I remember, I would never forget it. Like, it was this day, right? And this is the only time until the final, like until the final fallout. This was the only time in all those years I had ever been mad at this friend. This one time was the only time I had ever felt a type of way. So boom, I'm crying to her this one day, like literally was like, I told her, I was like, I want to myself. Like, I feel like that. Like, I feel that bad. I was crying so hard. And I was sending these audios, and I was basically just like, you know, laying everything out on the table, right? Y'all, her response to that, and this was after several times where I had been peeping, the responses was always getting like this. And again, it had, in all the years we were friends, it was just this one year that the responses were like this. So I was like, what the fuck? So the response was like, she kind of addressed it for like a second. But then in the middle, she goes, basically she was like, you know, I know this is not the time. She was laughing when she said it. She's like, I know this is not the time, da 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 da, but I need help right quick. In the middle of me having this fucking breakdown, right? I need help right quick. And I'm like, you know, like, what's up? Because I'm thinking it's something like super important, because like, I'm telling you, I don't want to be here, bro. I'm thinking it's gotta be something important. So I'm like, yo, like, what's up? Like, I'll help you with whatever, right? She goes, So this guy flew out to see me or whatever, and I'm actually not in the city that he flew out to. I don't know why I told him that, but I told him I was there. So he flew out to see me, and I'm calling him, knowing he's calling me, and I just need somebody to help me with the live right quick. So like, you know, can you basically like, you know, I'm gonna have him call you and just tell him that, you know, you're with me. And she was like, I know that you're probably not up to do it right now, but like, I'm just gonna have him call you and like, you just tell him like, and I was looking like, no, she had asked me, she said, you know, I know you're probably not up to do it, but like, let me know, because if you are, help me out. And I told her, I was just like, honestly, like, I'm not in a space to do that right now. She was like, okay, cool, that's fine. I'm gonna have, you know, this other friend do it. So, I'm not crying. This lash is like poking me. Like the way that I put it on is poking my inner corner. And also, if y'all have been like an OG, you know that my voice is naturally shaky, bro. Don't get in the comments, oh, I can tell this story's hurting you, all this other. My voice is shaky like a fucking preteen all the time. I have an underdeveloped preteen adolescent voice. It shakes, it cracks, it do all that. And I don't even be sad, bro. It's just, that is what it is. The universe ain't blessed me with that like sexy siren voice. No, ma'am. I got a 13-year-old boy, okay? Anyway, but yeah, so basically, you know, all jokes aside, in that moment, I was just like, yo, like, I cannot believe that in this moment, after I told this friend all this stuff, this, like, it was just so tone deaf. It's like, girl, like, you could have had somebody else do that. You could have contacted somebody else with that. It almost gave like, okay, I see what you're saying. Let me shit on you one more time. It's just not the moment for that. And it's like she had been shitting on me, but it's like she almost took that moment and was like, ooh, like, let me really like put the nail in the coffin. Like, I don't know if you really believe what I'm saying, that I'm the better pick than you. So let me just use this moment to really drill it in, because I don't think you hear me. But it's like, girl, I hear you. I'm not competing with you. Like, you are my friend. I love you to death. We're not competing. Like, why do I feel like you keep trying to like put me in this competition mode? Not directly in that moment, but like later down the line, as more things start to happen, I started to, in my head, my mentality would be like, okay, like when we go out, I have to put this on, I have to wear this, because if I don't wear this, I'm basically gonna be playing Robin's Batman all night, and everybody's gonna be weird towards me, and they're gonna be like nasty towards me, or they're gonna say things to make me uncomfortable, or they're gonna compare us and basically like try to make me feel lesser than. So like, I have to like step crazy, like, and I always step when I go out, but it was like, my mentality, I would get so much anxiety because I was like, I have to step super crazy, because if I even lack just a little bit, everyone's gonna spend the whole night comparing me to my friend and trying to make me feel like shit in comparison to my friend. You should never have to feel like that, because it should be, you know, even if they do that weird ass shit, my friend is gonna have my back, right? And so after a while of like, I feel like she kept on like doing things like that, like kind of like picking. After a while, it put me in competition mode, where it was like, and I wasn't necessarily competing against her, I was competing against the ideal that I was lesser than. It was like, I was almost like I was competing with myself, because like I wasn't, because even with everything that was going on, I still wasn't competing with her. It was just like, I was competing to like, basically like impress myself and like make it through the night without like people being weird. So like, that was always the goal for me. It was like, the goal went from like, oh, like, let me go out and have fun, to like, okay, like, all right, like, you need to go out tonight, and like, if no one's weird to you, then like, you did the damn thing tonight, you know? And what the fuck even is that? You know? So it got like that. So that was the one time that I was ever actually mad at her. And I like literally, like, when she said that, I knew exactly where I was and what I was doing that day. I remember that whole day, right? I was in the grocery store, because I was sending audios, and I just stopped, and I was like, hey, you know, the last audio I sent was like, you know, hey, like, I'm not really in the space to do that. You know, so the other friend that she named is gonna, like, they're gonna have to do it, because like, I'm just not in the space. And I still, like, I honestly should have called that out, and again, that's my fault. I should have called that out, and I didn't. I was so hurt, and I was so upset, and I was so bad. I didn't even call it out. I was just like, you know what? I just need a couple of days. And the reason, honestly, the reason I didn't call a lot of these things out is because I feel like social media makes it sound like anybody who is having an experience that like they're not the friend getting chose on, everybody assumes that like, oh, like if you say anything about your experience, it's like, oh, you're a hating ass bitch. You're just mad because your friend's better than you. They're prettier than woo woo. And I didn't want to be painted as like, oh, like you're a hating ass bitch for just, you know, wanting someone to validate my experience and just kind of like being like, hey, you know, like this is not really fun for me. I'm going out and like I'm basically playing sidekick. It's 11:11. You know, this is not a fun experience when it's like I'm going out and I'm basically playing sidekick the whole night. And not only playing sidekick, but like when I say men would be nasty, like, and that's why when I see videos and girls are talking about their experience, like being like the less attractive friend or like being like the ugly friend of the friend group. And I'm not saying, I know that I'm not ugly, but the way that men were treating me, you would have thought that I was the ugliest fucking person on earth. They would like, in order to talk to her, they would, and I've never had, it was just this 1 year. And this is why also, like, I know I'm like going into a whole bunch of different points. I saw a video on TikTok as well about like energy siphoning, and people kind of like do it without even realizing they're doing it to you. And I feel like my energy was being siphoned this year of our friendship because like I just like felt like I looked different. And then the minute we separate, I feel like I got my glow back, right? But at this time, I felt like I didn't feel attractive. I felt really ugly. I just like people were treating me like that. And it was to the point where like, you know, men would like, they would be so rude to me in order to talk to her, and it would never be addressed by her as a friend. And I would just be looking like, damn, like, why are you not defending me? Because I would never, like, if a guy was trying to talk to me and literally overstepped or like cut in front of you, like you don't even exist, like you're not even a person, I would have addressed him. I would have said, yo, you got me fucked up. Like you didn't, I see you want to talk to me, you don't have to disrespect my friend and try to talk to me.
And I guess to me too, it was also like, why would you even want to deal with people that would treat your friends like subhumans just to talk to you? Just to clarify, this wasn't every single person that approached her or that she dealt with, but it was just enough times to where it's like, okay, it does happen pretty often and you are letting it slide every time. She had people that were also very kind to me, or, you know, respectful or nice, or, you know, like they were normal. But when we would be out in these public settings and people would be a lot more, because these weren't situations that were happening amongst like in more private, intimate settings. Like it wasn't like that. Like you might hang out with your friend and the person that they're dealing with or whatever. This wasn't happening in settings like that. This was happening in like group settings where we might be at like a function or something, or we might be out and about, and only out and about at night. This never happened in the daytime. This would be always if we were like out and about at night at those type of functions, that this would be happening, where like these guys would like say weird stuff or kind of do weird things. It was always those type of settings.
So I started to be able to like relate when I would see these videos online, like kind of like going back to what I was saying a little earlier, when I see videos online and girls were like, yo, like what it's like to be the friend that's never approached. I became, amongst me and her, the friend that was never approached. And I get that people are like, oh, that just means like you're intimidating. Men know they have to step correctly if they want to talk to you. That doesn't make the experience of being the friend that's never approached feel any less hurtful. I do know that men, like, and I'm not saying, and that's the thing too, like, I never want to say like, oh, like they just go for the weaker link, because that's what everybody always says. So like, oh, they just go for the weakest link. That's not even how I viewed this person. That's not how I viewed her. And I don't feel like, I feel like kind of saying that doesn't give, I feel like it kind of discredits the fact that like, you know, men like found this person beautiful. They found her very attractive. And even though I know that that doesn't mean that I'm not, I feel like saying like, oh, they just went for the weaker link kind of like discredits that person in the fact that somebody could be attracted to them. And I feel like that's with anybody, and I don't feel like that's really fair to do. So I wouldn't say that, but I do feel like, you know, sometimes you just intimidate men. And I was one of those people where I guess I have the curse of intimidating men. Fast forward, I was meeting people where, you know, through dancing and stuff, I met a lot of people that were like industry, like as far as like music industry, athletes, things like that. Like people that have like status. It doesn't necessarily mean like anyone needs to kiss their ass or anything, but like they have status to where like other people, like if you were to, like I wouldn't get on here and ever be like, oh, like I've met this person, that person, that do. But if you were to tell people like, oh, like I'm cool with so-and-so, or I met this person, or meeting this person vibed or whatever, they'd be like, oh shit. So I started to meet more people like that, right? And I became that friend where, and I've always been, again, like I said, very extroverted, very much so like people, I'm a natural magnet for people most of the time, except this year, it didn't feel like it felt like my magnet was broken or something. But where it wasn't broken was when I would be on my own, and then also through my IG, people tend to gravitate towards like my social media presence, and then also tend to gravitate towards me in real life. So I was starting to meet a lot of like promoters and things like that. So I became that friend where basically like I was that friend that could get you into any event, any concert, any private event. And I mean private. I mean shit that like we probably should have had to sign NDAs for, but men are stupid. That's literally the only reason. Men are stupid. So when I became that friend, naturally, I want to bring my closest friends along for the ride. Those are the people I enjoy hanging out with most. And I don't want to go to these events and be surrounded by, you know, when you go to these events, it's like you're surrounded by all these freaking bitches that, and I've said this before like a long time ago, they're stank acting as because they're all trying to get chose, or they might have already hooked up with the person in the past and they feel like this fake ownership over this, like, you know, musician or athlete or whatever the fuck, even though this person, this musician, athlete, whatever, has invited all his hoes to the party. You're one of literally like 12 girls that he's already slept with and invited everybody to the fucking party. Like, you're not special. Like, but because they feel they're delusional, and they have this idea that they're going to basically, like, I don't know, like, they'll fuck their way to the top, or one day he's gonna wake up and choose them and they're gonna be like a rich housewife or whatever. I don't know what the fuck they be thinking, because honestly, don't none of the girls that get invited to these parties get chose. But in their heads, they think it's gonna be that. So they are like very like just nasty acting, very stank, got attitudes, and then they wanna do this like fake like little like, oh, I'm so classy. So no one wants to dance, no one actually parties, they don't be having fun. They just be like on some like just really stank shit. So I always want to invite my friends, because I knew that like no matter the setting, me and my friends are gonna turn the fuck up. We don't care. We're actually here to have a good time. So when we would do that, these people, these industry people, like they're not used to girls coming around and actually like, and not saying like we're the only girls on earth that do this, but again, majority of the time, like there's a vibe. So when we would do that, we would come around, me and this friend, and we would actually be having fun. We would actually party. People would, of course, are gonna gravitate towards us because we're actually having fun. We're actually partying, right? I'm thinking like, oh, we're just vibing, we're having fun. And then we get around, like, we would get around these people and she would just start saying like really, oh my God, I hate to be that, like, I feel so bad telling the story, but I'm just genuinely just telling the story. She would start saying like really pick me ass shit around these ninjas, and I just be looking like, bro, like. And again, this was during a time where this is the longest I had seen this friend be single. And again, like when all this started happening, it was the first time I had seen my friend single. And I mean, like, again, like I said in the beginning, completely single. So again, I feel like that's why she was spiraling, because we get around these men and it'll be like, oh, like I remember, okay, so one time, and it would always be stuff like this, where I was just like, yo, like you never act like this when it's like, when it's just us, when it's us and the girls, like you don't act, like this is not you, and you're too pretty to act this way, like this is not you. We get around men all of a sudden, verbatim, this is one instance. We're sitting in the truck, right? It's one of the black trucks, whatever, so it's like, we're sitting in the truck, it's, you know, the guy, the athlete guy was sitting across from me. I'm sitting like, well, okay, so this is a truck. He's sitting here, I'm sitting beside. And then, you know, like there's like the back row. And so she's sitting on the back row with another girl. And I have a story about the other girl too. Like honestly, this whole friend group was like some stories. Not necessarily was jacking them. They were not my cup of tea to hang around, for real. Anyway though, we're sitting in the truck or whatever, and we were talking about dating, random conversation, we were talking about dating, right? And me and him were saying, we were like, yeah, it takes us a little longer to like decide if we like people or whatever, right? just now, because like that's dead ass me. I take a little longer. Like I'm not somebody who like fall, like love bombing does not work on me because I'm so logical that like I know like the joke when people are like, oh, like, you know, love bombing works on me because I can't see why you wouldn't like fall in love with me in 2 seconds. Like the joke is funny, don't get me wrong, it's funny. I laugh when I see the joke, but I also laugh knowing that like that's not necessarily, like that's not my experience, but it doesn't mean I can't find it funny. So like me, I take a little longer, whatever we do. So we're talking about that, right? We're all having a conversation in the car. We're all talking about it, and she goes, well, me, I fall in love in 2 business days. And like after I get like, basically after I get effed correctly or whatever, like I start cooking and cleaning right there for 2 business days, like in 2 business days, and like doing
wifey shit basically. Like, you know, those things that I guess I hate to say it, but it was pick-me stuff. But the things that the pick-me's normally feel like sets them apart from like, I guess what they consider the average girl. And a lot of the time it's like things that they can perform for men or like do for men. So that's what she was saying. Then we were also talking about first date ideas and like things that people like to do for first dates. And I was saying, I was like, you know, well, I kind of like more daytime activities because I feel like everyone always thinks nighttime for first dates these days. Like, I don't know, I think something fun and competitive, because I like competitive stuff when I go on dates, like go-karting or like top golf. Me and her had similar dates, similar first dates that we both enjoyed. We get in front of this nigga, I want my first date to be like, take me to Barnes and Nobles. Like, I need to be stimulated. Like, I need to just, I want to read. I want to go to like, and I'm just like, not saying no one does that on a first date, but also saying you can just tell when things are very performative. When she said the thing about Barnes and Nobles, the guy looked and he was like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that on first date. And it was kind of like, you know, the car got kind of like paused for a second. And everyone was kind of like, I don't think we really want to do that on a first date. That's a cool date idea. Not saying it's not. But it was like one of those things where like, you know, when you think something's going to hit and it kind of misses. Now, granted, this didn't stop him from, well, y'all will see later on in the story. This didn't stop shit. But it was just kind of like an awkward pause for like literally maybe all of like 3 seconds. I'm listening. I'm like, friend, like, you look too good to be trying to like, it would be like every time we would get around these men, it would be like she was trying to like oversell herself like a car salesman. And I would just kind of be like in shock because again, our whole friendship had not been like that. So when we started, like when it started happening, I was just kind of looking, I would be confused because I'm like, damn, like, I would just be confused because I'm like, bro, like this is not, like you don't ever act like this. Like what's going on? Like you are a vibe. You're pretty as fuck, you're cool as hell, intelligent, smart, all the things. Why are you acting like this? And it didn't make sense to me. So, but again, I'm not ever gonna like try to embarrass you in front of like no other people or whatever. So I'm just letting it rock. I would know it, right? So we're talking, and she goes like, and she had started doing this thing too around like, this is multiple different times this has happened where, she started doing this thing where like she'd be like, you know, we'll get around these men, all of a sudden it'd be like, I just need to have an intellectual conversation. Like I just haven't had a stimulating conversation for so long. I just need to have an intellectual conversation. Like people don't be talking about shit. And I'm like, again, like not in no hater way, but I'm like, I'm listening. I'm just like, so start it. Like people don't normally announce that. They just kind of like, you know, they just talk about whatever topics they feel like they want to talk about. They just start the conversation. Like you're trying to announce that you're like such an intellect. You don't have to do that. Like y'all, like genuine confusion. I'd be literally genuinely like, I am so, what the fuck is going on? Like, but I'd be like, okay, like I'm just gonna keep vibing. Like let's, you know, we're gonna keep drinking and stuff. Like we're having a good time. But like, friend, like what the fuck is going on? Like, why are you acting like that? And not to mention, it was even crazier because me and her would have conversations about girls that acted like that. And we would be like, what the heck? Like, why are they doing that? Like, that's so cringy, that's so embarrassing. We would literally have conversations about the girls who get around these certain men and they try to act like, oh, so different. And again, I'm just gonna keep saying, like, this friend never used to act like that. So when she started doing it too, it'd be like, okay, like, we're starting the conversations, like, you know, like, why do girls be doing that? But then in my head, I'm also like, ooh, friend, you kind of fall into that category too now. And I'm just like, I don't know, y'all. I really just can't get it across enough how confused I was, because to me, again, it's just like, this is such a beautiful person. So I just didn't understand, like, why it felt like all of a sudden they were trying so hard when it's like, you don't have to.
And not only that, like, because again, men are fucking stupid. So I started to feel as though, like, I'm not even gonna lie, y'all. Y'all can take this however you want to take it. I felt like, so with us, like with our dynamic, I've always been more of like the, like, I guess like the politically correct friend, as far as like talking about like social issues and things like that, and kind of like the uncomfortable deep conversations, right? I've always been, and I'm not saying like me and her couldn't have these conversations, but it was like, that was more something that I was interested in, right? And then when it came to like, you know, starting businesses, making money, like things like that, we both, like the more political correct stuff I was more into, but we both were into like businesses, making money, like entrepreneurship, like both very smart girls, going back to school, all these things, right? You know, reading this, that, and the third, all these things, those were interests. We literally, y'all, when I say identical, we had almost all our interests were the same. But then we get around these men, and like, I feel like there were some spots where it almost felt as though, it felt like my personality was being sold to these men, and they were eating it up, packaged in another person. And because I wasn't vocally saying like, oh, I do this too, or I'm into that, or da-da-da, because I wouldn't get around them and then start talking about like, oh, I do this, I do that, because I wasn't trying to sell myself. So because I was more quiet and like chilling off to the side, and I wasn't like, so let me tell him why to choose me, why to pick me, because I wasn't doing that, it would always be interpreted as, at least by these guys, that was part of why they would be weird, because they would always interpret it as like, oh, like, that's, as in me, that's the friend that really don't have nothing going on. Basically, like, they would try me like, oh, like, you're the tag along, like, clearly, like, that's the Batman and you're the Robin. And they'd be like, no, I'm just securing myself. I don't need to sell myself to y'all. And I know how I'm coming, because honestly, when it would come to shit too, it's like, you know, men would always, they would get around us, and because she was doing all that, they'd be like, oh, like, you know, she must be like, she's this, like, they would literally say stuff like this. She's the spicier friend, like, oh, like, she's this, or da-da-da. You must be like, they would think, y'all, that me, Cherry, was the non-confrontational friend that probably wouldn't stand on business.
And these men would also try me up like I was the friend that didn't have anything going for myself, like I didn't have any interests of my own, like I was just like, they would literally interpret, this is why I say men are stupid, they would interpret me being more quiet as me not having anything going on for myself. Meanwhile, I have many accolades that I can brag on, but I'm not a braggadocious person. And not only, it is really not even about not being braggadocious, I'm not putting on a show, a performance for these ninjas. I'm not doing it. I'm really not, and especially not in a setting that's not even genuine. We're out in these settings partying and having short-term conversations that like don't lead to anything, and like with people that are not even necessarily always high vibrational. It's a difference between being in a setting where somebody is actually genuinely trying to get to know you, and in those settings, I'll tell you all about myself. But in these settings, in these party settings, I'm not doing the performance act.
It's like I was taking L's at the expense of another person because I love that person so much. Instead of being like, actually, like, little do you know, it'd be more so like her being like, basically, like, not saying it, but the attitude would be, I'm enjoying getting all this attention, so I'm gonna let you try her up. I don't care if I know that that's not actually true about her. I'm enjoying the fact that you're like basically giving me all the attention, and we're like, I'm having the time of my life, we're vibing like that. So I'm not gonna correct you. It is what it is. If I correct you, all you're gonna do is spin it. It's gonna look like I'm making a frantic dash to try to like prove myself if I try to correct you in that moment. So at the end of the day, I'm just like, you know what? Think what you mind you, there was no leader in the group. It was always us giving the same energy. There was no leader in the group. So it was like we would come around these niggas and like they would try to force it. Like they would try to force us to act out in a way to where I guess they were trying to determine a leader, but it's like I am secure in myself. Like at the time, I know I said earlier in the video, like I was insecure, but when it came to like being around, like I was insecure, but I wasn't projecting that onto other people. And even though I felt insecure, I knew that logically I felt that way for the wrong reason. So I was really able to like self-reflect and process why I felt insecure. So when it came to these guys saying this stuff, yes, it hurt and it didn't feel good and it felt horrible. However, it didn't make me want to like prove myself. It didn't make me feel like, oh, like I need to prove them wrong. Because where I was still secure was in the sense to where y'all do not mean shit to me. We're probably not gonna, I'm not gonna see you again. We're probably not gonna link again. So at the end of the day, I'm not about to go out of my way to try to prove myself to you. And I can tell at this point that you are purposely trying to like, you trying to stun me to impress my friend type shit. And then my friend, because she's enjoying whatever weird ass shit you got going on, sometimes even I would feel like, sometimes I feel like she would kind of like, sometimes it almost feel like she would like try to like really, you know, when I say it was the most subtle of subtle, she would kind of be like, start to like kind of like take part in like the stunning, I guess. So where it would be like, it'd be stuff where in private, me and her might have a whole conversation about something, right? We might say like, I don't know, clownfish have 2,000 babies a year type shit, right? We get around some men, some ninjas, all of a sudden, oh, you know, we might all start talking about clownfish. Now all of a sudden it's, and you know, say if I were to be like, yeah, like they have like 2,000 babies a year, that's crazy. All of a sudden her, 2,000, they be having 3,000, 4,000 babies a year. Where'd you get 2,000? And I be looking like, again, I would just be confused because I'm like, bro, like, why is you acting like this? Like, where did this come from? And honestly, keep that in mind because, again, when I tell y'all the thing that was the final straw, I'm building up to, like, what was the final straw because it was a whole situation within itself. And honestly, the one that was the final straw, I might just do that as a part 2 because it's going to wait way too long if I try to tell it all together. So, I don't know. But just keep that in mind, right? It'd be things like, okay, but on Twitter, again, kind of like going back to what I said in the beginning, like the tweets was like, it'd be some stuff where it's like, okay, like, this get a little specific, okay. But you know, I would let it ride. I'd be like, you know what, if it don't apply, let it fly. So I was letting it fly, because I was like, it don't apply to me, but I was like, some of these be stuff that it don't apply to me, but I also have like, I know my intuition don't be off. And I feel like this person might be throwing shade. And I don't personally feel attacked by it because I know it doesn't apply to me. But I'm also kind of like, in my head, I'm kind of like, why do I feel like this is shade though? You know? Or even the fact that like, okay, all the stuff on social media would be about niggas. Like honestly, the bulk of the tweet, it's always about niggas, bitches being mad because niggas want her or something like that. But then the next tweet would say, and again, you know, you can't really read too far into people's Twitters because at the end of the day, like Twitter is really just a bunch of shower thoughts and impulsive thoughts. That's really what Twitter is. But every now and then, we're not gonna act like Twitter don't also be people just dead ass like, you know, like we gonna be for real. It'd be like, oh, like, don't you bitches get tired of talking about niggas all day? But I be looking like, now I don't want to be a hater when I think this, so I'm gonna get this thought out of my head because I love you. But I be looking like you're bitches. Everything revolve around niggas, talking about niggas all fucking day. Everything revolve around niggas. And I'm not saying that's all we would talk about in person because in person we would have such a variety, a plethora of different conversations, deep, just like very like, just all types of conversations, like fun conversations, more serious conversations, like just all type of conversations. But then everything on like social media would be about niggas. it will get around, like, if it would be a night out, the night out had to revolve around niggas and getting chosen on or picked by niggas. Like, if it would be a night out, the night out had to revolve around niggas and getting chosen on or picked by niggas. It was always like, I need to go out, or like, we gotta be around the ballers because I didn't get chosen, because, you know, because again, we was both going through a lot of shit. And it was like, you know, times are hard, but I know if I find a nigga or whatever, I know like the one thing I rely on, I know a nigga will take care of me. Woo. Okay, cool. I'm not knocking it. To each his, I'm not knocking that. But then don't make it seem like, oh, everybody else is so male-centered and you're just like the one girl on planet Earth that like don't revolve around niggas. When it's like, girl, if anything, like you revolve the most around niggas. And I hated that for her because it was like, damn, like you were really like, you're my fucking friend. I love you to death. But I know that over a nigga, you will get missing on me. And I know that over a nigga, like you will get like her personality would just like completely change up every time we got around these guys.
And the other thing would be, then it's like, okay, you're online saying that you don't have any women friends, you don't have any female friends, you don't have any friends outside of like, you know, maybe one or two people, and you want to make more friends, but then you also don't value female, like woman friendship over a relationship with a man.
It's one of those cases where like someone changes up and in your head you keep on saying like, okay, like when is this person gonna go back? Like, are they gonna go back? Like, is this the new you? Like, what's going on? And you keep on kind of like saying in your head like, damn, like I miss the old you type shit, but you kind of expect that person to revert back and they just never revert back. So that's really what was going on. Like, I just kept on being in my head like, yo, what happened? Like, why is she acting like this? Like, this was never her. Like, this is really like, this is like a new version of her. But like, what happened? Like, is she just going through a phase? Because I just feel like she was just going through something. So I was like, she'll go back to herself when she's no longer going through whatever she's going through, right? But I just really started to peep more and more stuff. And then as I was peeping, it got to a point where like my anxiety was getting bad around this person all the time. And it was like, because I didn't feel safe. Because I felt as though like, you know, I'm only safe with you if it don't involve some ninjas. And then I'm no longer safe with you because you'll let them say whatever to me. You know, you'll let them put us in awkward situations and we won't leave. And then it also got to the point where like, towards like at the end, I'm having dreams. And y'all know, if you've been here long enough, my ancestors, when they really want to get a message through, bitch, they do not be playing in. This is very, I'm not saying like, oh, this just happens all the time, like I'm a seer. That's not what I'm saying, because it's really none of that. It's just for very specific situations. If it gets bad enough, they will start being like, all right, bitch, now, you know, at this point, we really need you to see this for what it is. I was just like, you know what, like we'll be fine, like we'll be fine, like we'll be fine. We're at an age where like, we're both smart, and I know you're smart. We're both very intentional, and I know you're very intentional. I know that you are not just not reading the room and tone deaf to like the way that you're responding to like me being vulnerable and telling you my emotions. You're not missing that. Like, these are very intentional attacks on my self-esteem because you see that I'm low. Every time I beat myself up and I'm like, oh, I don't feel like this, I don't feel like that. It's like, yeah, the words that are coming out of their mouth are like, no, don't feel that way. Words might be empowering, but the energy wasn't. The energy was like, I'm gonna play my part, but I hate to say this, but I feel like this is really what it was. I feel like it's like, I don't feel good about myself, so I need you to feel bad about yourself. And even though I don't feel good about myself, I'm getting a lot of outward validation for myself at your expense. And so it feels good to me. Even that being said too, in terms of relationships, okay, when we would talk about relationships, it felt like the goalpost was always being moved for me. Like every time I would reach, I guess, a goal that was considered like, oh, like, you know, at first, like when we first met, we had two very different dating experiences. I didn't come from a dating history of men that have just like spoiled me with things or like, you know, done a whole bunch of luxury experiences or anything like that, right? Doesn't mean that I feel animosity towards anybody who has. Like, it is what it is. Like, those were just the cards that I was dealt. That's okay. Like, you know, that don't mean you gotta stay in that energy or stay in that space. That's just, at the time, that was my situation, right? I don't feel like it started off as malicious. So what I'm about to say, I don't feel like it started off as malicious. I feel like originally it started off as her kind of being more so like, girl, if a ninja effed with you, they would do this and that, right? So I was like, damn, she right. Like, you know, she got a point. But then it's like, then they just would start doing this and this and that. And then it would be like, oh, well, if they really fuck with you, they would be doing this, and that. And so I'd be like, you know, and it's not like I was going out to try to fulfill these, like, these goal marks or goal posts or anything like that. It's just I was in a bigger city meeting more people, so I was having more luxury and more, like, just a wider range of experiences, right? Like, if the example was like, oh, they not effing with you unless they fly you out. Okay, say they flew me out. Then it was like, oh, they're not effing with you unless they fly you out and they give you money while you out there. Okay, so if they flew me out and they gave me money, then it's like, oh, they're not effing with you unless they fly you out, give you money, and take you shopping. Which is like, you're moving these goalposts, but these are goalposts that, like, they're not even doing for you either. We're friends. Like, I'm close enough that I can see what's going on. Like, and that's okay.
And when I say that, I'm not saying that this friend didn't have emotion. Please don't feel like that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I feel like there are different versions of having emotions. There are different levels. And then there are just different things that people, like, some people just have emotion with different aspects of their life. And that is perfectly fine. That's okay. It's okay to have dating experiences that don't look like a Twitter thread. And not even just that. I distinctly remember feeling like at one point, I felt like she would kind of like set these goalposts. And then if I would, again, this was just happenstance that I was happening to meet the goals, I guess, because again, I was in a bigger city. I had access to a lot more people in higher tax brackets. So I was, you know, it was like things that didn't used to be the norm for me were becoming the norm, right? But it also felt like when my standards did start to increase, and I might say something like, oh, well, I want a guy who makes this much a year or whatever, and this is the minimum that I would go for or whatever. Or, you know, say if I would be like, oh, like, you know, I want him to do ABC, and ABC was things that she had always mentioned that she likes for guys to do or whatever. It would be like almost trying to tell me like I need to be more realistic when it's like my standards were realistic. I'm not saying I need him to buy me a Birkin with a 9 to 5. I'm saying that I want to date somebody who makes, you know, 200 to 250,000 a year minimum. It's realistic. I know the average man doesn't make that. I don't want to date or marry the average man. And I'm like, okay, but these are things that you've also said that you won't settle for, things that are less than this or less than that. So why think that I should? And through other conversations we would have, I started to realize, and I don't even think this is something that she realized that she was doing. I think she was basing the things that I deserved off of how she saw my value in a relationship. And because she didn't see my value since she saw my value as lesser than hers in a relationship, because she felt like, you know, I cook, I do all the things that, you know, you're supposed to do in a relationship, like, you might do some of those things, but like, you don't cook, like, you don't, like, maybe you don't do this, you don't do that or whatever. It was like she wasn't outwardly saying that, but I could tell from like kind of the responses I was getting that it was given like, you don't feel like I have much value as you do in a relationship or like as a partner to somebody. So you don't feel like I can ask for certain things because you don't feel like I have that type of value. And because you associate your value with also the ability to keep a man and stay in relationships, and I don't stay in relationships, or like I have long-term relationships, but I have big gaps in between relationships, basically is what I'm saying. But because I don't stay consistently in relationships at all times, you are associating that with I have lesser value, so I shouldn't be asking for the same things. And that's not okay.
So we get to this situation where this was probably like the end of December, early January. I'm working this job, right? Me and my friend, we had been talking this day, right? This random day we were talking or whatever. I was on break and I got off break. I went back to work, right? And I think during the conversation, we were talking about like she had wanted to go like a concert or something, like something where it didn't make sense for either one of us because both of us were struggling financially. And me at the time, even though I had just got that job, it was like, yo, I'm really trying to get, because I remember saying like, hey, you know, like, thank you for inviting me, but I'm really trying to get my bread back, right? Like, I just got this job. And it didn't help that I feel like every time I get a little bit of money, it's like she would just like want to do all this stuff that would like burn through it. Because I already knew the vibes. I'm like, bro, like, no, like, I just am now about to get paid. I'm about to come into some money. I don't want to blow right through my shit. So, like, I can't go. But it wasn't a negative conversation or a aggressive conversation. Like, she just, you know, she invited me or whatever. I was like, no. So, boom, I'm thinking everything cool or whatever. So, like, later on in the day, I'm like, sending her, like, I think I was sending her, like, memes or whatever, or, like, texting her or whatever. Mind you, that whole kind of week leading up to this, her location kept on, like, not being shared with me, right? And we had always shared locations. So, I'm like, you know, the first time I'm like, okay, like, maybe she, you know, I don't know, she might be on a mission. She probably don't want me in her business. Like, I don't know what she's doing. I'm not thinking nothing of it. I'm not your mom. I'm not thinking nothing of it, right? I'm sorry for all these corrections, y'all. It actually wasn't that her location was being turned off. I was sharing my location with her. In my location, I kept getting a notification that said, you've stopped sharing locations with so-and-so. So that's why I thought it was my phone, because I'm like, I'm not going in to find my iPhone and turning my location off for anybody. So, like, why does it keep on giving me these notifications? So I would share my location again every time I would get that notification. This probably happened like 2 or 3 times. And I would just be like, oh, that's weird. Like, why did my thing disconnect? And I would reshare my location. A dummy. In this moment, I was being dumb. I don't know what the deal was with that, right? But so we have this conversation this day or whatever. I'm on break. I go back in. I get off work. I'm like texting my friend like da-da-da-woo-woo. And I'm noticing, I'm like, okay, the location stopped being shared. But then, and I don't know what prompted me, like how I even figured this out, but I was like, damn, I was unadded off of Twitter. I was unadded off of IG. Like, she had unfriended me off of like all the social medias or whatever. So I'm like, I'm in shock. So I'm like, what's going on? Like, you know, like, this is my best friend. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, that's strange. Like, I'm thinking like we're good or whatever. And like, this is just, I'm being open and transparent with everything. I'm not trying to like be shady. I'm gonna keep saying that because I'm not trying to be shady. Up until we actually officially stop talking, she was like, oh, look, like my Facebook, I logged out and I couldn't log back in or whatever because we had been Facebook friends, everything. To this day, I honestly feel like her Facebook password never got, and again, this friend used to lie a lot, like unprovoked about stupid shit. So it's just like, and I used to catch her in these lies all the time, like all the time. But I was just, again, I just feel like, okay, like, I'm not stupid, but I'm just, you know, I'm gonna let you have it. I don't know why you're lying today, but I'm just gonna let you have it, you know? To this day, I feel like she probably unadded me on Facebook a long time ago or whatever. Facebook, I don't think is deleted. I feel like it's probably just, you know, she was already like on her, like she just wanted a space that was her own and didn't have, you know, like the friend or whatever on it. I don't know. I think that's what happened. But anyway, so I started panicking, right? I'm just in my head, I'm like, what did I do? Did I do something? Did I say something? Like, did I rub her the wrong way? Like, what did I do? I am, like, y'all, when I say having a conniption, I spent that whole week, like, bawling, crying my eyes out. Like, bawling, I mean, crying myself to sleep every night, bro. I was like, what did I do that my best friend does not want to be my friend anymore? I was so hurt and so devastated. That shit hurt worse than a breakup. I was taking breaks at work to go in the bathroom and cry, bro. No appetite. Like, I'm just over here. I'm looking on fucking TikTok, like, you know, I'm looking for like best friend breakup stories to see if like other people can relate, to see if like they made up and became friends again, because I'm like, okay, like maybe there's hope. Like, I have to find like something to, like, I have to find hope for the situation, because I'm just like, in my head, I just can't believe that like we have fallen out. I was going through it to the point I called my mom crying. I was like, and honestly, again, I was going through a lot of other shit. So I called my mom crying because, one, I needed her to help me pay my rent that month, because I had just got that new job. I was in training. I wasn't making any fucking money. And, you know, dancing was like, this was one of my, like, I would go through phases with dancing where it's like I would try to be a civilian for a while. So like, this was one of my, like, I'm trying to be a civilian. I don't want to go back to dancing, like, da-da-da, I would do. And the club was fucking slow. So I called my mom because I needed her to pay my rent. But I broke down on the phone to my mom about the fact that, like, I'm like, mommy, I don't know what I did. My friend, I guess, does not want to be my friend. It sounds like some childish shit. Like, I sound like a fucking elementary schooler saying that, but it is what it is. I was like, I don't know what I did. My friend doesn't want to be my friend anymore, and I just don't know what I did wrong. And I'm bawling my eyes out, crying. Like, I'm supposed to be asking for the rent money. I'm more concerned with, like, I'm crying because I'm like, I don't know why my friend don't want to be friends anymore. There was like, and at the time, like, there was like this tension. So like the tension was like light, but like heavy at the same time. Like, I know that's weird, but that's the only way I can really describe the tension, right? So I don't know why it surprised me when she had done like this soft cutoff, but it's still just like, I don't know, I guess in my head I just thought that we would have had a chance to like talk about everything that wasn't being said. And so when the soft cutoff happened, it felt like, damn, like I'm never gonna actually get to like, you know, kind of like say my part or say my piece. And that's my fault, because I should have been said my piece. The minute I started noticing certain things or feeling type of way, I should have been said my piece. But I also felt like it would have came off like I'm nitpicking every little thing you're doing, or I'm nagging every little thing you're doing, when in reality it's just, it's like you was kind of cutting up, and I just kept peeping shit to the point where like when you let things go for a certain amount of time, now it looks like you've been keeping tabs, or like, you know, then it looks like you want some weird shit because you let it build up. So that was my fault. I let it build up to the point where if I would have finally like said something, it would have been like, damn, like you've been felt this way. You've been, you know, you've been letting stuff build up. You ain't said nothing, which is weird because again, I'm the confrontational friend. So it's weird that I didn't say shit. But I also feel like on her end, with her being how she is, I also feel like the way that it was handled was weird. So basically I had ended up reaching out to her, right? So I'm like, what's up? Like, why are we not friends right now? Like, what happened? Like, what did I do? And then I was like, you know, and I even said, we never been weird bitches. Like, that's never been us. So why are we both handling this situation like some weird bitches? Like, this is like the whole situation is weird. We talk it out. Well, we didn't even talk it out. I sent that, we end up like basically like being like, you know, hey, like we're gonna like talk about everything or whatever. And I don't know how, but we ended up just jumping back into being friends, and nothing was ever addressed. The tension was not addressed. The little situations, the little commentary, nothing was addressed. We just ended up basically like, I reached out and I was like, well, you know, I love you. We're not gonna not be friends. And then boom, we just went right back into like being friends. There was no conversation had. And honestly, if I had to think about like probably like my biggest regret out of the whole thing was that we didn't sit down and have a conversation about what was going on to even lead up to that. Because just the way that I say, you know, my intuition works, so I might have felt this, or I might have felt that, that person clearly their intuition, they were feeling shit on their end or whatever. Like, you know, I don't know what all she was going through at the time. I only know what I saw, like the bits and parts that I saw, right? My camera's gonna die, so I'm gonna probably, this is definitely gonna have to be like a part two. And all that's going on, and that was the first soft cutoff. So what ultimately led to, so after that first time or whatever, we end up hanging around these guys, right? And I'm not gonna tell the whole story because that literally needs a whole story within itself. But long story short, I felt like I was not made just because I'm grown. I wasn't made to stay in an uncomfortable situation, but I just also feel like my friend didn't give a fuck that I was uncomfortable. And it was just all about, well, I'm trying to like, basically I'm trying to spend the night with this dude or whatever. And I had said like, hey, you know, because there were other girls there with us. And the other girls were like, they were gearing up to leave. Like, we were in Jersey, they were going back to New York. So I'm like, hey, like, let's leave when they leave or whatever. Ooh. She like acting like she's too drunk, and I'm like, bro, I know you're not that fucking intoxicated. You're acting like this so that we will stay here and you can be like, oh, I don't know what happened. Like, I was so drunk or whatever. Ooh. And you can stay with this, like, this guy that you're trying to stay with. Meanwhile, his friend is like gunning to like, wants to be all up on me. And I'm just like, bro, like, I don't want his friend. I don't want to stay here. I don't want to be made to feel uncomfortable. I'm trying to like, hey, like, can we wrap it? I'm not trying to leave you here. But granted, at the end of the day, I should have just said, you know what, we're grown. You know, this is somebody that, you know, you've kind of like y'all been kicking it. I should have just said, you know what, it's fine, and just let her do her thing. Instead, I was like, no, I'm not gonna leave my friend, like da-da-da-woo. I felt pressured in that moment. I felt pressured, not by her, but I stayed to be a good friend to her, but then I felt pressured by the friend. And it was just awkward situation. And that was one of the first times I was like, damn, like, this is really like, I've been kind of peeping up, okay, like when it comes to these guys, like, I can't really count on this person, but especially when that happened, right? So boom, but I got past that, right? I definitely went home and cried the next day because I was like, and I'm not trying to say it like, oh, like he, you know, he violated. That's not what I'm saying. I don't even want, you know, people to misinterpret what I'm saying. But I felt violated because I did not want to have the interaction that I had with that person. But what really was the icing on the fucking cake to everything, y'all? This is when shit really, really started to just hit the fan to the point where it's like, all right, like now, like you not even hiding the shit anymore. Like this is insane. And this all, like, shit really, really hit the fan and was like the ending of everything in 1 week, right? But it was like 3 different situations that happened in 1 week. I kid you not. So the first situation, right? Because the first situation could lead to the other ones. I put this friend on to work at a club up in New York that I knew was like, you know, I was bartending at the club at the time. I was like, yo, I feel like you do good here. I feel like you make a lot of money.